our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Well, today's project is this mid-century modern walnut china cabinet. Backstory on this is I picked it up for $75 at a local thrift store. It needed to be completely refinished. Had some chips and dings in places where we had to replace some veneer. And I didn't bring you along for any of that. We've done that over and over again, and these rote refinishing jobs are just kind of getting a little bit boring. But there is an issue that I wanted to show you how we're going to handle it. It's a big ink stain on the top of the china cabinet. Now, this cabinet is veneered. We have repaired stained veneer a couple of ways. We did on the mid-century modern buffet, the Paul Macabre, we inlaid a new piece, but that was a solid piece of maple. This is a veneer. We've also used color concealment techniques to hide stain. Most recently we did that on the quarter sawn oak plant stand restoration. But this one is on a piece of veneer, and it's really, really dark, and I could color conceal it or try to color conceal it, but I thought it was a good opportunity to show you guys how I handle a situation like this with veneer. Would also apply to burns. I get a lot of questions on how do you fix cigarette burns. So let's take a look at the damage and then we'll get going fixing it. Alright, this is what we're up against. This entire piece has been stripped. I did that yesterday. But as you can see, we have this huge stain here. I believe this to be ink or dye or something. I have no idea how it got up there, but it's not coming out with sanding or scraping, or it's soaked right in. And then above it, if you can see here, is a water stain. Now this would probably come out with oxalic, or most of it would come out with oxalic, but if you run your finger across here, I can feel that this veneer is starting to wrinkle. So what the heck, let's get rid of it, and when we don't have to worry about dealing with wrinkled veneer. So it'd be very difficult for you to see, but I marked a line from here to here, and then across the top from here to here. And we're going to take a razor blade and run it through the veneer all the way to the substrate along those two lines, and then we're going to remove this entire piece of veneer. We're going to fit another piece in there, glue it down, clamp it, and then sand it, and then we'll have another piece of walnut here and all this awful stuff will be gone. Some of you may argue that, hey, this is the top of a 6-foot cabinet, nobody's ever going to see it. And you're right, except for when somebody buys it and then loads it in their car and sees that, they're going to be very disappointed. We don't like people to be disappointed with stuff that we do, so we're going to fix this. So here we go. I've got the first cut lined up with this metal straight edge, and the straight edge is clamped in two places to the cabinet. I strongly suggest when you're making a cut like this that you clamp your straight edge down very, very hard to hold it with your fingers. They tend to want to spin around. Fresh blade in the utility knife, and we'll make our cut. Now the idea is to get rid of all the bad stuff and leave as much good stuff as you can and still make your inlay repair as simple as you can make it. You know, there's no sense trying to trace around this and then inlay there or make a big circle, because that's just going to look unnatural. So like we've talked about before, when you can go with the grain, go with the grain, and when you have to go against the grain, usually a diagonal line will conceal a little bit better than a straight line, although I've used both. Okay, hopefully you'll be able to see, and I'll get on with this cut. I've got the straight edge clamped down using my 12-inch deep clamps. I've been looking for a set of 12-inch clamps for a very long time. Been looking for an old set, couldn't find them. Finally broke down and bought these off Amazon. They do the job, but they're made in China, and you can just feel when you screw it and unscrew the threaded rod, it just grabs and grinds, and the quality's just not there. Functionally, they do what I need them to do, but I would much, much rather have an old pair of American-made things back from the industrial age, but we'll find a pair eventually. All right, let me get this cut and I'll bring you back. Okay, in as much as there's not really any loose veneer here to get up underneath, I'm going to use the heat gun, which is running behind me, and I'm sorry if it's making the audio bad, and see if I can loosen up a corner and start working this veneer off. So here we go. Clearly this is going to be fairly slow going. This veneer is down pretty good, so I will bring you back. And after about 25 minutes of rather tedious work, we have most of this veneer off. The light colored stuff is the substrate, and then what you see here that's darker is just the last remnants of the walnut veneer. It's a true walnut veneer, but I don't know if you can see how thin that is. It's like 32nd, 64th of an inch, something like that. It's just really paper thin. This is a Bassett piece, and it wasn't one of their more expensive pieces, if you know what I mean. It was kind of a working man's selection. I put some tape here to keep me from overstriking when I was working that line. So I'm going to do a little bit of chisel work here, get some of this off, and do a little bit of sanding, and then we'll make a template to inlay the new piece of veneer. And I've done some sanding of the substrate, and this is how it came out. We have a chip right there, and the very, very corner here did not survive. But these little things we can fill in once we get the inlay in. I've got pretty much all the veneer, old veneer off. I'm going to come back with a little bit of sandpaper right here and try to get that last little bit off so we're tight on the corner. This veneer is extremely thin. The veneer that I'll be replacing it with is probably twice as thick, and it's all I really got that's big enough. So we're going to have to do a little bit of sanding once the once the glue hardens to get that smooth, but that's to be expected, I suppose. Let me show you how that came off. This is how all that veneer came off. This right here is the biggest piece that we got. It just basically was so thin it just came off, and very often in layers, like right here, that's probably just the finish layer, and then the rest of it's stuck. So it's not easy when you're pulling off veneer, particularly off newer pieces of furniture. Lots of times with the antiques and the older stuff, the veneer it's thick and it comes off in relatively easily in big pieces or in sheets. This was kind of like someone glued wood-colored paper down on it, and it came off very difficult. But anyways, it's off. I'm going to finish up the last little bit of preparation for it. We'll make a template, and then we'll cut our veneer, get it glued in, clamped up, and let it sit for a day. So I'll bring you back. And this is a piece of just standard bond paper, 8.5 by 11. And I've got it taped up over top of our area that we're going to inlay and folded under here. We're a little bit short. I measured it just under 3/4 of an inch, so I just indicated here to add 3/4 of an inch. Normally when I cut veneer, I always run it long wherever I can, so I don't have to worry. The critical lines are this one and this one. And remember, if you're off a little bit here, you can't fix it by pulling it down, because if you pull it down, you're going to pull it down here too. So we have to be fairly precise with this. Alright, and I just like when you were in school, you can mark this line just like this. And while we all want to be precise, just remember, if we make a little mistake, we can always fill it. Okay, we'll cut that out, and just going to use my fingernail to give me a little bit of a better idea where that line is. Alright, let's cut this template out and see how it fits. Okay, I'd like you to think that I nailed this first time out of the box, but that's just not the case. I had to do it twice. But now we've got the template where we want it. We'll go 1 inch long on this side, and I'm just going to do a little tiny trim right here. It's just a little bit over the line, and I'd rather do it in paper than have to wrestle with the veneer. So I'll bring you back and we'll get this veneer cut. I've got our template tacked down to this piece of walnut. I just use some spray adhesive to do it. And this walnut you may recognize. This is some more of that old radio cabinet that I saved from a restoration I did years ago. I actually had to make a solid walnut top for that radio cabinet because this one had been so badly destroyed. So what I'm going to do is just using the template and this straight edge, make these cuts. Now, one thing I noticed with my straight edge, there's a little bit of a curve right here that it picked up, and that's going to be very, very difficult to copy in, so I'll probably just cut along and try to shape it. And it's probably tough for you guys to see, but we've got a really good fit. The problem is that the veneer is really thick, much thicker than the existing veneer. And a lot of the lines that we cut in the old veneer have tapered, so it's not like there's going to be a real strong butting of the new lines with the old. But I think it's fit in there as good as we can hope. I've left it long on both the sides and the bottom. And I think the best thing to do now is I'm going to leave this paper on here because this is so brittle. I don't want it cracking on me. You can see it's already split down here, but we'll get that taken care of. But I think the thing to do now is to get this glued up and on there and clamped up, and we'll let it set. All right, let me work out a clamping plan, get the equipment ready to go, and then we will get this glued in. Well, there's how it's clamped up. I've got looks like a 1x12 piece of 1x12 or thereabouts as the caul, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clamps, 3 of the F clamps on the bottom, and then 3 of the long reaches. Anyways, I'm going to take you inside, and what I did is I put a piece of maple across there for the clamps to grab onto, so we're not marring the inside of the cabinet. So as long as that veneer patch didn't shift, and I hope it didn't, we taped it up well enough, it should be down. Tomorrow when we take this off, there will be quite a little bit of sanding to do because it's going to be proud by a 1/16 of an inch probably, and we'll have some fill to do. You saw some of the places where the existing veneer chipped during our removal, so we'll have some fills to do. But hey, it's better than a big ugly black spot that was up there. So until tomorrow, so far so good. I'll bring you back when we unclamp this. Well, it's another beautiful morning, but it is cold. It's only 26 degrees out here. I know you people from the north think I'm crazy, but that's cold for down here. Let's get in the shop and see how we did. Let's get these clamps off and see how we've done. Fingers crossed it's not a mess. Any bets? All right. That's on there good and tight. Seam looks good. You know, obviously we've got to sand this difference in thickness down. We've got to be real careful when we sand to stay off of this because we know how thin this is. But I think we're on the way to a good repair if we don't have any disasters. You know, it's always a little bit of a challenge trimming the extra veneer cross grain, but we'll get that done with a sharp chisel. So let me get at this and I'll bring you back. I'll bring you in and see how I'm cutting the end grain on this veneer. I've got a board clamped to the edge here to keep it from snapping, and I'm using a veneer saw this morning, and I'm actually holding it back quite a ways at an angle from the side. I've got a piece of blue tape there to help protect the side of the cabinet, but I'm cutting this fairly wide, and I'll trim this with a nice sharp chisel. And I've got the chisel right up against the side of the cabinet, and I'm using my thumb to make a slicing motion. And I will tell you that this veneer is tough. All right, let me get back on this. Okay, we've got this all trimmed back where it's got to be. Now all we've got to do is sand this down. We've got quite a little bit of sanding to do because, as you remember, this veneer is thicker than the original. I gave it some thought. I remember on the Kent Coffee Perspective dresser we had the same issue with the veneer thickness on the panels, and I realized that the manufacturers probably just buy these, in this case it's particle board, in some other cases it's plywood, veneered panels, and they come from their supplier with the thinnest bit of veneer on them, and the thicker veneer goes on the edges. And I had done some edge repair and saw that I was pulling off pretty thick veneer, so I didn't have any problems with going ahead with this repair because I figured this veneer was thick too. And I guess now I realize that we've got to always keep in mind in these later manufactured pieces that these large panels are going to have very, very thin veneer on them. All right, well, I'm going to start with my my cork block with 120, and I'll sand this, start to bring it down. I'll work up to 150, 220, and again, we all know how thin this veneer is here, so we got to be very, very careful not to sand through it. So I will bring you back. You see it? See it now? You should be able to. Take it like this. So there you go. That's how you inlay a large piece of veneer to get rid of a big old stain. Well, listen, I've got to refinish this entire cabinet, and I got plenty of work ahead of me. And I think this video did what we set out to accomplish, and that's to show you another way of taking care of those big stains. Also works for cigarette burns too. Well, listen, from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards, thanks for watching, take good care, we'll see you next video, bye.